There you go.
And I'm not gonna tell you what, but I wouldn't have this all ready.
I understand.
Okay, so we presume
I
that's
have
your.
this, that's it.
More, okay.
Everybody gets a free oil change, you can't keep track. Nissan dealers in St. Charles, every vehicle they sold, they had free tires.
They're not, they're gonna be in the.
Free tires?
No, we should have.
Want to put a row up?
I never,
A row of chairs?
the guy
Probably
worked
would be a
with
bad
the
idea.
Nissan,
Yeah, thank you, that.
I think they
Oh,
had.
Frank Simpson's was that.
Oh, yeah.
Business, and he hadn't got his free tires yet, you know? And he was like, why? Why the free tires? That was something that guy, he wasn't paying about people's vehicles.
Yeah.
He wasn't paying out people's trade names.
Oh, that's right, same number.
I feel like they just completed it and someone knew it.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. Are they open? I mean, now they're saying that. You know, they park right down there, I guess.
Oh, Michael.
Noticed on the queue, it's
Hi there, so you know the process, we have, yeah, we got that.
it's not down the queue. It's like it would have been my queue. So.
Yeah, two sets here.
We want,
Yeah.
Well, it is. Well, it's true. I'm good, how are you?
Hard to find some
We're gonna start.
comfortable, blood pressure stays, you know.
yeah, it's.
The small church right
Look at cars, you look at your car.
Exactly,
To buy a
yeah.
car, yeah. Do you remember the Jeep?
Still there, just has a few. Well, I don't know what it, but he's still. If he said it, I would probably would. Yeah, he said it.
Oh.
No, you're incoming.
You know, most cars are almost.
That's one of the little problems we have with that screen, you gotta watch your.
4 or 5 years.
I'm trying to think about what we did throughout our vehicle. Yeah, it was a lot more than what it should have been, any of it. $15,000 over the list. That would be what we need to do.
Lordy,
How do we stay in business?
you're a heck of a lot more work than I
I always wanted to leave her.
I don't know.
She's so
We could also get a longer table.
John, if I can, for this portion, we're gonna invite you up front as a potential active participant, since this is a joint meeting.
I am.
Well, it isn't yet until Mr. O'Dwyer shows.
Yeah.
I don't have a forum on my committee.
Yeah, especially justifying it.
Yeah. Wow.
This one, I don't know. I won't touch anything I'm not familiar with. We're gonna begin in a minute. Yep.
How's it going, Ryan?
How are you?
Couldn't be better. It's a beautiful spring day. It's not raining yet.
This is new to me, so. This is,
That looks dangerous. What is that?
this looks like a page, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I don't know, Chief, you wanna give her once over? You want to say this is yours?
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, let me get on this. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the special meeting of the Village Board and the Finance Committee of the Corporate Authorities of the Village of Campton Hills to order for Tuesday, March 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. We have one member of the Finance Committee, so we're going to just we won't call this a joint meeting until we have one more individual show up. At this point in time, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
And I'll go ahead and call the roll today, as the clerk is not available. We'll start with the Village Board. Trustee McKelvey?
Here.
Trustee George?
Present.
Trustee Muncy?
Here.
Trustee White Eagle?
Here.
Trustee Millet? Trustee Capel?
Present.
Village President Tiro?
Here. So we-
Trustee Malek is here.
we're going to call them in. So we do have a quorum. All right. Trustee Millette is remote in Washington DC on some business. He is standing by, has requested to participate. As the rules apply, I would ask if one board member would make a motion to allow Mr. Millette to join.
So,
Second.
Trustee George, Trustee McKelvey, all those in favor, or do we need a roll?
Let's do a roll call.
Let's do a roll.
Trustee George?
aye.
McKelvey?
Here.
Muncy?
Yes. Aye.
White Eagle?
Aye.
Capel?
Aye.
Okay, we'll bring in Mr. Millette. Trustee Millette, are you there?
I'm here, I'm gonna keep my phone muted because it's been a loud restaurant.
Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, so we do have a quorum, and let the record reflect that Trustee Millette is joining remotely. Just as a way of announcement, we will have opportunities for public comments at this hearing, this workshop, and at the regular meeting, which we expect to commence at about 7 o'clock. Tonight's meeting is a budget workshop. At our next meeting, it will be available, the proposed budget will be available for public hearing and review, but that will be at our next meeting. This is a workshop for the board. With that in mind, I'll ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, with this, we'll open up the 2023-24 budget workshop. We expect this, as has historically gone, to last roughly 1 hour, and this is the first presentation before the board of the proposed budget for 23-24. I'll turn it over to Administrator Bertrand.
Yes, thank you all for coming. We are pleased to present our draft of our budget for 23-24. And I will begin with just going over the general fund revenue sections and highlight just some of the major points. You will notice we did all of our revenues in the tax category: income tax, building permits, local use tax, sales tax, video gaming taxes, and the cannabis use tax. Were all estimated at 95% level. So we went through, we estimated what we expected it to be, and then we went to 95%. I did, the building permits you'll see, I estimated a little bit lower. The projected this year, we're projecting to collect 210,000 in building permits. We had quite a boom year last year. This year, because of higher interest rates and the economy, I kind of went lower just to be on the safe side. So, are there any question in that area on the taxes?
Michael? If I may interrupt at this point in time, we do have majority quorum for the Finance Committee. Mr. O'Dwyer has arrived, so Mr. Olson, if you would call your meeting to order as a joint meeting.
I call the Finance Committee of the Village of Camden Hills to order as a joint meeting with the Village Board.
Take your roll call.
Michael? Present. Timothy? Absent. Deborah? Absent. Greg? Absent. And I'm here.
All right, thank you.
And just for the record, it's 6:11.
All right, so then if we move down to our next section, which is license and fees, I just based the estimates upon, our typical liquor licenses, the video gaming. We are expecting more in that area. I think the state increased the amount we could charge for video gaming licenses too, so we did get a little more there.
That was approved last year and instituted, I believe, last year.
Yes, yes. The AT&T franchise fees, we're expecting a little lower. People are canceling more of their, cable, so we're not expecting that to be high. Electric aggregation, that is no longer a big revenue for us anymore. So we will get $6,000 this year for electric aggregation. Also then Comcast, again, I estimated a little lower, and that's it. We're also looking at, I have Nightcore franchise fees in here. We are looking at maybe doing a franchise agreement with Nightcore, which we haven't had.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, just for purposes of clarity, as we're looking at this and for the audience, we're looking at those final two columns over there, so fiscal year 2023 projected
Yes.
and 24 projected. So remind me, when does our fiscal year start again?
Our fiscal year begins May 1 of
Okay.
this year.
Okay, great. So it's that last column there.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's what we're projecting. Mhm.
Yeah, just a question on the night court. Explain what that's for. You know, all of a sudden we would want to get fees from them. Explain how that works.
Right, so, most communities have franchise agreements with NICOR and ComEd
Comcast.
and Comcast. We have Comcast right now, but we haven't had one with NICOR or ComEd. So I did reach out to NICOR, and the estimate they said we would be able to get revenue about $20,000. I haven't heard back from ComEd yet.
But for clarification, it's for the right to go through the village easements is
Yes.
really why you're earning the money.
Right, right, and yeah, this did come up with, when ComEd came in and they asked for a permit for something, and usually, it's covered by a franchise, so we're looking at those.
Does everyone understand the issue about right of easements for them to come through as the reason for that? Okay.
The next category is fines, and, you'll see, I basically looked at our past collection of different fines. Most of our fines are collected, through the circuit court, for different police activities. The police, we collect we're assuming we'll get like 25,000 next year. Local P fines are the, tickets that the police officers get at the municipality, which is handled, they don't have to go through the Kane County court system. And that's to relieve the court system of some minor offenses, so.
Just if I may, for the board and potentially the public as well, we instituted many years ago, it lapsed for a while, we brought it back, the adjudication process. And the benefit of going through the adjudication process is when it goes through the courts. Chief, help us out here, what percentage goes to the courts when a traffic fine goes through the courts?
Easier to say what we get back, we get 11%.
Okay, we get 11% when it goes through the courts. When we adjudicate here, what happens?
100%.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but those have to be lesser offenses too.
Right.
Yeah.
Denise, if I may, could you scroll so the top of your form is at the top of the screen? There you go. Go down a little bit.
Down
Yeah,
more.
scroll down a little bit, down.
The other way.
Go up, I mean?
Yeah, a little further.
Okay.
Well, there.
To the fines.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions on this category?
I have a question on one item on the category. The code violation fines, why are we projecting such a significant increase under that category?
Well, we've kind of stepped up our adjudication procedures, and in the past, we've been pretty much about, compliance, and we still are, but we also find that there are some people that are repeat offenders and they're not resolving the issues, so we are stepping up to get people to make these improvements in their properties or have to pay the fines, so we're getting a little more serious about it. I mean,
When we had zoning officer, that sort of thing, which I assume would lead to some of these fines in the past, before COVID, before 21, obviously, before 2020. Were we anywhere above this 450, 500, 800 level before?
Apparently not, that's what we're showing. For a while, we didn't have adjudication, and then, but like I said, a lot of it was more just trying to get compliance, so they never fined anyone, they let, once they complied, they didn't charge any fines, so we are finding, we have some people that, when they look through the files, we have complaints from years going back, so we're.
So, maybe I'm stating this incorrectly, but
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong. The number of code violations is not expected to increase that significantly, but the number of fines and fines collected through adjudication is expected to.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
For compliance.
For compliance.
Compliance is always the first avenue to get there, but what we've found historically is the complaints continue to come in repetitively because the requests for compliance are ignored. And
we've had other people through adjudication, and we knew that we didn't want to fine them, we just wanted to make the improvements, and we've worked with people for like a year and a half to get compliance, and we don't fine them, but there's sometimes where it gets to the point where fine is necessary, so,
Understood, thanks.
okay. And, fees, section here, pretty basic here, we do collect driveway access permit fees, again, we projected this year to be a little bit lower, considering, most of Norton Lake has been developed, and those are all for driveways, and again, you know, because we're seeing an increase in, interest rates, that, you know, there may not be as much building going on this year.
If I may, kind of the same question, the zoning development variance fee, why that's expected to more than double?
Again, I think it's because we are getting a little more, getting more interest in people coming in for zoning variances, and we're paying more attention to it, so I did raise that one.
I just overall comment, I guess, if I may, you know, obviously, we as a village want to help our residents to stay within their codes, to not violate them, and when they have a request for zoning development, variance, whatever, kind of help them through that process, not fine them. Which I'm not saying we are, but just keep an eye on that, please, because the perception there with, you know, these are not huge numbers once we start talking about the rest of the budget. I know I'm nitpicking here, but I just don't want the perception to be that we're trying to find everybody in compliance.
Right, well, this is a fee, so this is, we are actually finding a surge in people wanting in-ground pools this year. Major.
So there's another reason for it.
Right, there's,
Got it.
yeah.
Building
so-
permits.
Right, but this is for building permits, and so,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I might mention, just with regards to the fees, this is to cover our, cost of staff time, is the good majority of this, because the amount of time and the administration part behind that is, it's just a necessary part of working with the public, so, and it all depends upon how many requests there are. So,
and we have to pay the other consultant that does all our inspections, so of course, those have to be paid.
Thanks.
Next is miscellaneous revenue. There's a lot of categories here that I think we're looking to maybe eliminate, and maybe combine some of these, but we kept them on there because in the past they were part of those. The tenant rental income is Metro West rents from us, you know, so that would be what our income would be from them. And then the others are basically, you know, the K-9 fund is through donations and interest. Other than that, they're relatively small.
Question.
Yes.
I'm wondering about just a comparison, because of course there was more space that we were renting when we had a different tenant over there.
Right.
So, do you have offhand, like, cost per square foot for what was versus what is now? Is it about the same?
Yes.
Okay. So this lower number is really, I already know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. It's really because there's less space.
It's about a third of the space.
Yeah, okay.
Is there an offset also to the taxes, because we have to pay taxes on the piece
Yes,
of board?
we have submitted the application to not have to pay taxes on the whole building now, because they are a government body too. We are waiting at the state level, and we're waiting. And you'll see that there's an expense in the budget of $3,600, but we haven't heard back yet on it, so we're waiting, hopefully. Thank you. Okay, and then we can move on. Are there any other questions on this general fund revenue?
So I guess I have a general question.
Yes, back to that?
I just want to make sure. Yeah. Thanks. So, no, we can keep down to the total. I'm sorry. So does the board generally understand why projected is currently 2.1, but the projected for 2024 is round up, call it 2.9? You guys are comfortable with that?
the offset on the building permits, the difference seems to be that line item, and it seems to be a conservative projection on the income tax.
The biggest piece is, you're right, is the projections. So as a general rule, this is going way back to way previous beginning administrations, and I give credit to Patsy for starting that, because to put the village in a good point. And what it is the actuals are literally that. There's no conservative or liberal, however you want to view it, number. That's the actual number we're expected to come through. When the projection for revenue is going through, we're in most cases to be conservative and ensure that there's enough money and it's being properly spent. It's budgeted at about 85%. So when you look at the number, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would you go from 3 to 1? Is the village losing money? Are they not making money? What's the problem? It's not that. The number would probably come in higher, closer to the 3 to 1. It's going to be budgeted lower intentionally to be conservative and ensure that this board does not go over budget. So effectively creates a buffer for them to ensure that they don't have that extra money to spend to guarantee to the village and the community that they stay on budget. So that's the reason why.
Other questions, comments? So we'll get into expenditures. We'll go to the village board and legislative expenditure budget. Just to highlight certain things, the official allowance is going to be up to $50,800, and that is based upon an increase that the village board voted on this past fall as part of a mandate, and it would apply to all whoever gets voted in on May 1 will get an increase in their salary.
But that's across all of the officials, so if you scroll back over, for purposes of highlighting in 21 through 24, so you've got arguably a 3-year cycle, that's less than a 10% change up. Okay, thank you.
Okay. General legal services is basically our retainer with our village attorney. Litigation services, I didn't budget anything there at this point because we have money budgeted in other places. I'm not quite sure. In 23, we had budgeted 10,000, but I didn't really see the reason to put that in there, so I just left that at 0. The information technology, I budgeted $5,000. My thought was it would be good to get the village board Chromebooks to use so that we could, instead of doing paper copies and emailing and that kind of thing, we could put the budget out or the agendas out on the Chromebook, and you would have it. If there's any questions, changes, we can make them immediately. Kind of a way to stop a lot of the paper distribution and that kind of thing, become more paperless. It's up to you, but I thought a lot of boards are going that direction, so I put some money in for that. The Chromebooks would be about $3,000, and I put an extra $2,000 for other IT, any type of IT work we may need to do with Helping Hands and that. So,
if I may, where does the rest of Helping Hands MSP their IT services for us?
Oh, it's mostly in general administration. You'll see it later.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's just I just thought a small portion toward this budget for anything in this room or anything having to do with the village board. So other professional services is Metro West. Let's see, meetings that we attend through Metro West, which is we meet with other mayors and managers from the area in Kane County. And then we also do a lot of lobbying in Springfield, so it's a really important group that the president and I are involved in. Then printing and publishing.
If I may interrupt, does that include our annual dues or is that elsewhere?
No, that's there too.
Okay.
Then I have printing and publishing codification in the St. Charles Chamber of Commerce.
I'm sorry to interrupt, just for board. Years ago, we tried a economic development committee that unfortunately did not deliver, and it kind of dispersed. We, as an ongoing member, have been part of St. Charles Chamber of Commerce, and 2 years ago, in discussing it with them, their booklet now is, they're now St. Charles Area Chamber of Commerce. We have our own section, so we've got a broader audience and distribution for our economic base here.
Dues and subscriptions include, our dues for Metro West, the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, the St. Charles Chamber of Conservation Foundation, and CMAP, and the Clerks Association. Travel, lodging, and meals, that would include, again, going to these dinners at Metro West, and also some lobbying trips that the mayors and manager could go on to Springfield. The risk management contribution is our fiduciary liability contribution, and then just $1,000 I put in supplies again for, I thought, any types of special meetings, things that we might need for the village board and the village board.
So that's really an insurance policy, right, for this?
Yes, the risk management insurance. Yes.
Yeah, just want to go back a few steps as it relates to general legal service. Kind of understand it this year why it was higher, because we had zoning and, we had a lot of need for a legal counsel at every meeting, but I remember in the not too distant past when we didn't have to have someone with legal at our meetings. And so when I see us keeping the same dollar amount, I just challenge that a little bit, because I just don't see why we need to spend. It's 20,000 higher than what our old run rate used to be. So that's my question. You don't have to answer it right now, but I don't anticipate any big bills next year in terms of zoning when we need someone there to help us make sure we're doing it right. I don't understand why that would stay the same. I challenge that.
I will say we still have to work on the zoning map, so
Okay.
at the beginning of the year, we're gonna need,
Right.
but
But twice a month we have a meeting, we need legal representation twice a month. That's the question I have.
okay.
And then under litigation, tell me how you arrived at $10,000.
Yeah, well, that's it. That was last year, we put that in the budget. I didn't put anything in this year's budget. You'll see,
Do you have that somewhere else then?
That's what I'm asking, because there's nothing projected.
right, we didn't use it and I didn't project it. It wasn't spent this year, that 10,000, that account has been not spent, so. We put it in the budget last year, I'm not sure why, but.
To clarify, Denise, any expenses related to litigation this year were charged under general legal services?
Yes, and we have, we have there's some in the building and zoning department and the police, so we do separate some of our legal services in different departments, so. Any questions on legislative?
Anybody from the board?
On to general administration. So if you look at salaries, the 2024 budget request is up to $290,000. I will point out, that may seem like a big jump, but if we go back, and I can pull up another sheet, that I did if you look back at 21 and 22, we were actually higher than that. Let's see if I can find it now.
That's good looking.
Sorry.
No, that's wonderful.
Anyway, so if you look at the 2021 actuals and you add the salaries, the bonus, the overtime, and the contracts administration, which is 10/11/53/91, in both 21 and 22, we were over 300,000, and so we're not
clarification, we had contractors that are no longer contractors, so that money appeared in a different line item. That is what is going away in that category is moving over to this category as employees.
In terms of head count, I mean, it's 40,000, and that's basically, could be a full-time person, so
Right.
that's what I'm wondering, is it just for one additional staff member?
Well, it's still the village administrator, the executive assistant, the new accounts payable clerk that we hired, and then a treasurer. And I budgeted a little more for a 20-hour week treasurer, so that's where some of the cost is. And plus, this year we were missing a lot of people, that's why we were so low at 250,000. But, yeah, so it's an increase in the treasurer position and the accounts payable, because she'll be here the whole year.
Okay, so, just a clarification then, because I know that one of the things that we got into was, a lot of overtime with, some staff. So basically, this starts to mitigate, that overtime.
Right, yeah, you'll see I didn't put any money in overtime. We should not need any overtime with the staff we have.
If I may, is there, just a suggestion, is there a way to make that clearer in our next meeting, just to kind of simplify that, showing what, even going back further if you like, show what the progression has been in the staff, including
Yeah.
contract pricing and everything else?
I have a spreadsheet, I could pull it, let me,
No, next meeting's fine.
yeah, I do have
Just to
it.
make
I
clear
went
for-
down and I
for
looked at it
everyone.
because I was
Okay.
concerned about the increase, and so it does, I.
Not that we
can
can't
show
do the math ourselves, it's just for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a query about the personnel staff. You say you've got an adequate headcount to do the work. Have you thought about any anticipated needs that where there should be some slack in the budget to bring in any additional personnel that might be needed?
Well, it looks like, so this year, we brought on Lori. Lori's limited in how many hours she can work. So we are looking to have, we have brought in people to assist in catching up before. And we're looking instead of, probably be looking for a new treasurer, a 20-hour-a-week person. But with Dory and with our executive assistant and our accounts payable, a lot of that, they're taking on a lot of the financial work. So,
You're comfortable with that?
yes, I'm feeling very good about it.
And I think when we get down to the very bottom line, you'll see that I believe we still have a surplus in there, do we not? So you'll see that as we get down to that, there's a surplus. So again, this is the first draft presentation. We'll look at recommendations for minor adjustments, but there is the latitude in the budget if, for whatever reason, headcount needs increase. We're not anticipating them, but we have that option.
On the health and dental, we got great news last week. Last year, we did adjust our health and dental benefits, and we added dependent coverage, but we also increased the employee proportion of paying for part of the premium. We found out this week that our health insurance are going down 1%, the premiums, which is excellent, and even our dental is going down about 9%. So I just kept, so you'll see, I had initially expected a 6% increase, but I was able to lower our health and dental. And in our administration, we're going, instead, we're going to have 2 people who will not need dependent coverage anymore. So that's why that's a lower number there. Fox Mill Association, I'm expecting our dues to be basically the same as last year. I put a little bit increase in there.
Can you explain what that is?
That is, we pay association dues to this property group here in this commercial area. And so we pay for the parking lot and the lighting and
Then salt and
landscaping.
snow plowing and
Right.
what have you, yeah.
So just like a homeowners association. And then you'll see the real estate taxes are there, $3,600, hoping that I will not have to pay those, but I have them in there just in case. The audit and accounting, services are $25,000 I'm expecting, and that also includes our payroll services. Janitorial services, you will notice a big jump there. In the past, we would split this cost with the police department, 70-30. And we're now just putting it all in administration, because there really was no accounting reason that we would, have the police pay 30 and we pay 70. When actually it probably should be the other way, because there's more employees in the police. But, so we're just gonna put it all in administration. Plus we have, with the building and renovation and all the improvements, and the fact that this room's gonna be used more, we had to increase the janitorial service contract. So that went up quite a bit. And we're also paying for some mats from Syntax. So.
We just discussed this during our last meeting, and the amount wasn't nearly this much, at least for the basic annual cost. Could we see a breakdown of how we got from 7,500 up to what we're at here? 12,000?
But yeah, I can show you.
I think that'll manifest itself in the ordinance or resolution in the regular agenda. There's a breakdown in there.
So you're expecting that in carpet cleanings, window?
No, we're gonna do one per year, but the RFP, I asked for 2, but we'll just do one. But he is, the other janitorial service we had was very minimal. And so we really needed to get somebody in here who would do a good job.
I did try to explain that. Okay, thanks.
Okay, all right. Information technology, this is where our Helping Hands contract is. Our civic systems, which is Cassell, it's all here again. And again, we're moving it all, most of it to the administration department, unless it's specific IT for the police. So we're not dividing that up 70-30 anymore.
This is the one I did definitely have a question about. Sorry. I'd like to review the cybersecurity services provided by Helping Hands again.
Okay.
Go through which services they're providing us, the use of Chromebooks, how that would increase potentially the security, rather than people using email wherever they can and will. I'm not saying this needs to be increased or changed for next year, but I think that needs to be looked at again to make sure that we are utilizing everything that we can to make sure that the village.
We did, at the Finance Committee, suggested we do a technology assessment. So I have been looking into companies that could come in, somebody other than Helping Hand that would help us do that. I did put some money in. I didn't get a number yet, but I did put a number in, and we'll get to that in the capital budget.
Okay.
So, just board knows, there's a lot of fraud going on in the world right now, cyber hacking. The village is still on servers. It's my personal, I'm not an IT expert, I'm a finance, but we probably need to look strongly at moving towards the cloud. I'll let experts do the analysis and come back and give you guys conclusions, but I think behooves us to move that area very quickly, to have an assessment, figure out kind of where we're at, where our weaknesses are, where the vulnerability is also for people hacking us or getting into data. I'm sure the chief worries about that. He's brought it up numerous times in past years about the sensitivity of the data that the department has, and is it properly being protected. So I would strongly encourage the board to at least have an assessment of the strengths and weaknesses.
That's one of our primary goals this year.
The only other comment, now, this is not the year to do it, obviously, because we're there. And I assume we got Helping Hands, because at one time they were part of this building, and it just kind of started that way. But at some point, I'd like to see us open it up and get some bids from other folks to see what they offer, just to get some idea. I'm not saying they're high, low, or whatever, I don't know. But we certainly should be aware of that, and it does not hurt us from a fiscal conservative perspective to get those bids every so often. So I'd like to see next year, I'd like to see it open up to bids.
All right. Next down is that you'll see contract administration. I did put $20,000 in there again as just if we need help. Trustee Capel with just catching up and getting our books in order and moving forward. As Lori may move out and we need to find a new treasurer. So
part of that is also we're going to continue down the path of we've done a great job. Anybody who knows what used to be in that closet over there, bankers boxes upon bankers boxes, we've gone through 30 and now digitize them, and that's going to be an ongoing program to move from paper and get rid of duplicate records. We do have this year a state individual who's going to come through and literally release documents that can be retired, correct?
Correct.
So that'll be formally done through the state of Illinois.
Other professional services, we have 9,000 for website maintenance, Sterling, CalPERS, our siren, backflow testing, and our sprinkler service. Again, on telephone, 8,500, we are moving all Comcast and FirstCom telephone services to administration, and the only phones that the police will have are their specific cell phones and camera, the things that they have specific to police, that'll be in their budget. Printing and publishing, public notices, a newsletter, putting out our weekly community counts, that's there. Dues and subscriptions are different memberships for myself, the finance director, the clerk, and then of course, any conferences, there's travel and lodging. Utilities, again, we're moving everything to administration, that's why there's a big hike in that for all NICOR, ComEd, water and sewer, everything will be in administration versus the.
So when we get to police, that one will be depleted and this one will be replacing it.
So it used to be divvied up.
Right, it used to be
It's all
70%
consolidated.
administration, 30 police, but it's all the same fund, so there's really no purpose.
That's right.
So, our risk management contribution, you can see that was lowered, and that was due to, we looked at our policy and realized we were a little bit maybe overinsured compared to other communities. We were only 3 in the whole. There's like 44 communities in this insurance pool, and so we went ahead and reduced the amount of our liability, and which made more sense because we, unlike a lot of other municipalities, we have public works departments and sidewalks and things. We probably didn't need to be up that high, so we were able to reduce the cost there.
Is that a function of the insurance levels you took out, or is it due to the premium or the deductibles that you?
No, I didn't change deductibles. I just it's the amount of insurance that we need. Again, copier lease maintenance. Again, that's all been put into general administration. $5,200. Office supplies. That's pretty basic. Office equipment. I added $5,000 there to add any additional laptops or computers that we might need or upgrade. Right now, we've taken a couple of old police department laptops that they had, so we're thinking we might need to upgrade a couple of ours. Then you'll see our contingency this year, we did raise up to $150,000. I think in the past we've either been 100, and then we were down to 50. We went ahead and boosted that up a little bit to 150,000. So that's just a contingency fund.
I think you need to talk a little bit more about that. Some of that had to do with lowering the contingency in the prior year to put money more towards roads.
Okay.
Okay, and then I believe the understanding was the money was not used.
Right.
Okay, to do the roads. So the money was, effectively moved to do it. It wasn't done. Now they're going to be done, but you also have funding coming in on the roads. So you're able to actually take the savings and put it back into contingency and get the roads done this year. Is that a valid comment?
That's correct.
Okay.
The contingency fund has been around for as long as I can recall. Historically, it was established at $100,000. This is what you call, hey, if the wheels come off, you've got that reserve. It's not an expense. And in my recollection, other than that one issue with roads, I don't know that we've ever used the contingency fund, correct?
No.
You not only not used it, I'm pretty sure that the finance committee put a policy in place that was ratified by the board, that it takes a majority vote of the board to use any money out of that account.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
All right. So any other questions on the general administration budget, or comments or thoughts, any extra information you might want from us?
Let me ask a question about, the level of support we have for our web presence. And do you see any, need to enhance that intensity or improvement? And where would that appear in the line item?
That would be in, yeah, the website maintenance is under 9,000. 10/11/52/95 is our website.
Fourth line needs to.
Other professional services, yes, sorry.
And you have increased that 33%.
Right.
And that's anticipating some attention to that?
Yes, we will be attending to that. A lot of, yeah, that is a matter of just time commitment and, yes.
Well, building on that, just for point of clarification, I know that we're gonna be live streaming. So do we need to think about, those estimates that you have and maybe look at them and pick it up a little bit?
We might need to. Now, we've got the camera now, and we're putting it on YouTube. It's not live streamed, but it is. Depending on how intense you guys want to get on that, we could put some extra money into it, so.
May I follow up on trustee Lay's comment? Could we please check with legal also to determine at what point do we need to have an archiving service to archive any data to put on the web? I'm just using that general term. I just know that when municipality presidents, Facebook pages, these sorts of things, they generally use an archiving service to keep everything in perpetuity, if you will, so that it's always available.
There are also state guidelines on retention of records, and as I mentioned, we'll have someone coming from the state's office to say it no longer needs to be archived. Our goal is, one, to save on paper, two, also to make sure that we're not retaining no longer needed or useless information, so those are being reviewed constantly.
I mean, we have put some things on the website in the archives already, like some of the older things, but we'll look into that more.
Okay, we're bumping the end of the hour, so if we can hit those maybe a little more rapid succession.
All right. Next is community relations. There's not a whole lot to talk about there. It's $6,000 for community, for a holiday in the Hills, National Night Out, and those types of events. That was asked for, that the committee came and requested this amount.
So I see a $2,000 reduction. Is that the number they requested over? Okay.
That's what they asked for. So last year, yeah, they asked for 8. They didn't spend that much this year, so. All right, municipal police. The major item here is, there is a request. You'll see the salaries is up to $780,000. They are requesting an additional officer. And again, I can get, I have another spreadsheet that shows, a lot of it has to do with, like this year, you'll see projected was only $660, but the overtime is up high. So if we did hire a new officer, that would reduce our overtime. One of the big items is that we have a lot more state mandated training, and so a lot of our officers have to spend a lot of their time going to training, so that's where we need extra overtime. And we're also finding it's difficult, the part-time officers don't necessarily want to work the hours that we need them, and we're down to, I think, 3 part-timers that we can kind of depend on. So Chief feels that the best option was get one more officer and we'd be able to fill the need we have.
Yeah, just a comment. Last year, you recall, we approved the police, and then 40 days later, we were asked to add another can see that the overtimes really haven't gotten any better. So I guess the challenge I would have for the chief and anybody is, let's try to measure twice, cut it once, so that we're not always here. If that's what's needed, that's what's needed, but we didn't dent overtime. I know
If
stuff.
you take a look at the budget, the projected is 40 grand, the budget request is 10.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I understand, but I'm just saying that we always are in the same, I feel like Groundhog's Day, okay? We're always fighting over overtime, so let's try to solve it. If that's what it takes, fine. I was told last year that we eliminated it, and we approved it. So even though 30 days prior to that, we approved a different budget. So I just don't want to keep revisiting it. I just want to make sure we get the right number.
Sure. And if I may, Chief, and you can speak to this, how many unfunded mandates have been handed down for this year?
An additional 6, so we're at 42.
So we've got 42 unfunded mandates. Taking officers off the street will do some of that, but there will be, the only way to accomplish those trainings will have to be after hours.
One of the large things, if I may, with this, if you remember, we had an officer who was off on injury, and we still had to pay his salary, but we still had to cover his shift. So we had 4 months or 5 months worth of overtime because we were paying for him and that as well. So the additional officer, we have one part-time officer that I can count on at any time to work. It's the only job she has. Everybody else has a full-time job somewhere else. And understand the last 6 people we hired were off of our part-time list. And we also lost 5 part-timers to other full-time jobs somewhere else. So our part-time pool is very limited. And so all we can do is offer officers to work overtime to fill the shifts.
Chief, I just had a question for you in terms of this year's coming budget fiscal year. I know we talked a little bit about having a behavioral health professional, or discussing kind of the training and an officer who had a heavy background in that. So, are you looking to add someone with that caliber of assistance to the police department this next year?
For the officers or for the community?
Well, it would be, you could do either, but we were talking originally about a person that would go with you, with the officers on calls in situations that were presenting themselves as to being in.
Sure, that would be wonderful, if somebody wants to donate their time. But in order to pay, that's where all the departments are going to, is having somebody like that, but you're looking at it, a minimum of $60,000 to $70,000 extra a year for that.
Right.
Many departments are going that way, so I don't foresee that happening here, unfortunately. We are doing training in that location for all the officers 3 times now. There's 3 different mandates for that, so the officers can be trained on top of everything else they're doing to be that psychological person at the scene as well. So,
right. I mean, myself, I would like to start seeing us allocating funds, if not 100% for this year. I would definitely like to see us make our way towards having someone with that expertise on staff with the police department.
for social work.
Yes, because this has been, we've discussed kind of this on and off, and we have a strong need, as every community out there does, and it's time to pay attention to that. So,
Can I ask a question? Have you, and I'm gonna assume that you've already looked at this in terms, because I concur, I'm right there with you. And I'm just wondering in terms of stratifying the types of calls where someone with that particular training would augment the situation. So, I don't know if it's 15% of your calls, 30%, 50%, but that starts to very quickly make the case for this kind of allocation in terms of resources, at least in my book. Because I completely agree with you, Trustee George.
I would safely say 50% of most police calls today are mentally related.
and I think the story that you shared and the awards you presented to the 2 officers last meeting are indicative of community-based, chief that directs, to assist those people, and that's considerable time. I think we definitely need to pay attention to it.
Okay.
If I may, just one further comment, I'll be brief. I think this needs to be a broader discussion. We're talking about $70,000 for one person. If there's to be available on all shifts, we're talking about 4 people. So that's something that, we need to look at. I would prefer investing in our officers, in training our officers, especially at first. I would like to hear more from the police chief, and it's a separate conversation we need to have on how we manage this, how we go towards this resource for the public. I don't think that it's not valuable. I think it's just tough for a department of our size to get to, so we need to look at all the ways we can get there.
Well, and to your point, one of the things that I wonder about, and I don't know if there's an answer to this at this moment, Chief, you probably have a better read on it. Are there resources that we can contract with so it's an as-needed basis? When an officer might need special assistance, I'm thinking of like domestic situations. That's what immediately comes to mind, but you probably know more. And that way we're using it as an adjunct and a service that might be able to help us as opposed to hiring 4 full-time people.
If we can, we'll go back to the budget.
I'll skip through again the health insurance. We went through the police pension contribution, just to make a note on that. This number of $225,000 is based upon the state actuary. We have hired a lot of recommended.
Can you back up and give context to the change that has happened this year with the police fund for the public?
Oh, sure. So the police pension fund has now gone to a statewide fund, and so as a statewide kind of investment fund. So now they have a new company that's doing the actuary. They're recommending that we would contribute $225,000. Typically, or in the last year, we were at $185,000. So we're not sure what their actuarial study is based upon, what type of assumptions. So we have approved, the board approved us to do our own actuary to see what they would come up with and what number, and we're going to see, what it is. But I did budget us at that higher number.
We're still fully funded though.
We are still fully funded, over 100% funded in our department, and so. Go ahead, you're going to say.
Yeah, just to have an overall perspective as you watch those numbers. A couple of years ago, well, first of all, at this moment in time, based on the latest Illinois insurance data, we are one of 2 municipalities in Illinois with a fully funded police pension. What does that mean? By being fully funded or over that number, we avoid the potential for a tax which will be mandated from the state of Illinois in order to bring us up to levels. That will occur for just about too many municipalities. So we're dodging that bullet. A couple of years ago, we were 127% fully funded. We were overdriving the program. So the board, 2 years ago, I believe, made a decision to start backing off of that and not super overdrive that fund. We were at 107% at the last one. The actuarial numbers are coming from the state of Illinois, who, if we look at it, they want us to send them more money. So we're taking the other approach of doing an independent actuarial to understand what that true number is, and we'll have a dual comparison to find out whether the 225 is the number or something less than that is the applicable number.
Query is that's then up to us to decide. We can decide which is the more valid contribution level.
Yeah, that is not a mandate from the state. That is their guidance.
All right, next in line is the uniform allowance. We did increase that to $1,000 per officer. We were at $600, and the cost of uniforms is really expensive, so we did boost that up to $1,000 for our full-timers and $200 for the part-timers. That would be for the whole year. Bulletproof vests, we have to replace maybe 2 or 3 this year, so I put money in the budget for that. Let's see, the rest is maintenance of vehicles. You'll see the $28,000 we budgeted for Lexipol, which is, we subscribed this year, which reviews all of our police policies, and that'll be, and then also, we are moving to change our, we're changing from New World, or to New World, from Crime Star, so we'll have better coverage, and we'll be able to talk to the rest of the county, and so we're upgrading our radio services. That was actually approved in last year's budget too, so this is the continuation of that.
Report writing services.
Okay. There is $1,000 here for janitorial, that would be for the detention area specifically. The $84,000 for dispatch is for CaneCom, that's the number they gave us for that, for the year. Kind of move it quickly. Risk management, $50,000, that's also our liability insurance portion that we would attribute to the police services. All right, auto fuel, I estimated that at $4.50 a gallon, which is pretty high. The last year, I think our highest was $4.70. Most of it was in the $3 range, but just to be safe, I estimated the gas price at $4.50.
So look, last year we budgeted 50,500 and projected as 40,000. We continue to maintain an agreement with the highway department, which gives a huge discount on bulk fuel, which we participate in, and that works financially to our advantage.
Are there any other questions on the police budget?
Is the goal, just to get clear on what we're hoping to get through tonight, is the goal to go through all of this material? Because if so, I mean, I think maybe we could jump around a little bit, and do more exception, items as opposed to.
Gribble?
Yeah.
I mean, you got worksheets and so on, so maybe the highlights.
Okay.
It'll come back again at our next meeting for a full public hearing.
All right. Yeah, next is the K-9 budget, that's pretty much based on donations, so I don't think we really have to go through that, but I just wanted to put it out there. The police commission, they will be doing a test this year, especially if we hire the new officer. So we did budget $2,500 for them. Building and zoning, I budgeted, I revised the salaries for 2 part-time employees. We hired a new code enforcement officer who's been great. So looking at what our needs are, I think if we get another part-time permit clerk, that would work out really well in the building department. So that removed the health and dental insurance costs if we do part-timers. And so engineering services, I kept that at $25,000, and that's, you know, those, a lot of it is reimbursed. Those are fees that are reimbursed when people building a new home, or they have to have somebody go out and look at their property. Legal service for zoning, I have it at $24,000. Sorry.
But that's also reimbursed, is it not?
What's that?
The legal for the building, building inspections, new homes? I mean, the legal services that when someone comes in and makes an application.
Yes, if they have a variance application of that, we do get reimbursed for that.
Okay.
Maybe not all of it. Again, we'll still have some zoning issues. We'll need legal services for that. Building inspections, I put those down back to $75,000 again because of thinking maybe we won't have so many building permits going through this next year, so it's pretty conservative in that. But then again, that is reimbursed. All of our inspectors and those types of things are reimbursed. Cloud storage, Laserfiche. I did budgeted at $40,000 for our, again, for a contracted zoning officer. We have somebody coming in helping us with any variances and things that we may need, inspectors. So there is extra money there too. driveway access fees to the Camden Township are in here. Any other questions on the building and zoning?
So that number's coming down from the prior projected.
All right, MFT budget, again, our estimates are 95%. We based, what our revenues would be. So we're expecting 240,000 in MFT, tax allotment, and in the MFT transportation renewal. We do have 5,000 in interest. That might be a little high because if we use the money early in the year, we won't have the interest.
If you would go back up a little bit for purposes of the board, so you'll see 2 blanks going into 2024. High growth motor fuel tax, that was the temporary tax that the state of Illinois put on at 19 cents per gallon. That was a short-term issue. I think it was a 2.5 to 3 year program that does not exist in fiscal 2024. And then the Rebuild Illinois, that was 2 tranches of money that they came up with during COVID. That will go for funding of roads this year, but it's not renewable. So if those 2 blanks, if that was a question, that's why the 19-cent tax goes away. I can't remember the last time I saw a tax go away, but with Illinois, they hit you up with surprises. But that's those 2 blanks.
And that fund is restricted uses, right?
Correct. Right. The MFT is very restricted. There are state mandated applications that it can go through. If it's used anywhere else, that's where municipalities get in trouble. So it is very restricted.
All right, on the expense side, we budgeted, 50,000 for snow removal in Plato Township. Snow removal in Camden is covered through our agreement with Camden Township. Also, 15,000 in tree trimming. That number I received from the township. Then the engineering, design services and constructions, I'm estimating at 232,000 for the whole MFT program. And then we've got the 733,600, and you'll see the 473,700 is basically our MFT program that we had planned to do last year. That's the money that's going to be going, we're going to bid in the next couple weeks for this year.
Just again, for recap, for the benefit of all, when oil prices went through the roof spring of last year, the cost of asphalt went up 40%. And working through the citizens who manage our public works department, our engineer, the decision was made to defer paving last year on the expectation prices would be coming down. It would have meant that we would have gotten 40% less roads done last year, but by deferring it to this year, we've reserved that money, it's still there. And the expectations are there will be a considerable reduction from where prices were last year. So we'll cover more miles of roads.
How many miles are you budgeting for this year?
Last year, that money was allocated for I think it's just shy or about 6 miles. And then we have the MFT money that's coming in from this year. So we're looking at, we're waiting very soon to get the first bids, and we're projecting 8+. That's never been done before.
And I will give you the update from Scott Markberg. They did accept the application for the MFT. The plan is to open bids on April 3rd, Monday, April 3rd, here at the Village Hall at 10 a.m. So we are moving forward, so hopefully get a low price. So, and Scott will be here on the 4th to give us kind of a brief summary, but we won't take a vote that night because we have to really look carefully at the bids. So you'll see at the end there we have the fund balances that you can take a look at after. Yes.
If I could, as President here, for the same reason I explained to everybody, why it is that this year the maintenance services for streets, for culverts, and the IGA Camden Township has been removed under the MFT part of the budget.
One more time, just so I'm very clear.
In previous years, we have funds allocated under the accounts for maintenance services for streets, maintenance services for culverts, and maintenance, or excuse me, the IGA for the Camden Township under MFT, under this expenditures. In the 2024 budget request, those three items are blanked out.
Yeah, they're road and bridge.
I just wanted to thank you for explaining.
Right, and that, yeah, and those, these, a lot of these are for Plato Township too, some of these. All right.
You wanna go, before you go to capital, go to road and bridge,
Yeah,
so
it's
it's
gonna go to road
right
and bridge
next.
first. Okay, so here's road and bridge. So again, we estimated the revenues at 95%, so you'll see those are a little bit lower than what we did project for this year. And then the expenditures, you know, most of the money is going to the township, $535,000. The utilities are for our street lights, and we have the money to Plato.
It would be interesting, it's not a huge number, but we had those street lamps, which are under our budget, converted to, ComEd was kind enough to come in and convert them to LED. It's a little too premature, but we should see a significant, a reasonable for that as a percentage, that figure come down.
I've been looking at to see if the cost was down, so every month we get the bill, so. So. Any questions on road and bridge?
Let me ask a question about raising the revenue. If the road, if my understanding, road and bridge fund is basically a tax levy that's levied by at the township level, collected by the county. So we have no taxing authority to increase revenues for road and bridges. Do you know when the last change in that levy took place?
I do not know.
I do not know. That would be levied by the township.
Right.
When we looked at the revenues and keeping in mind the 95%, which is why we left it the same. With the tax cap municipality, it would be the lower of cost of living or 5%. Obviously, cost of living right now is greater than 5%, so we assumed it was 5%. Take it back to 95%, that's why it's zero. Roughly there is no increase from what we anticipated or what we received last year.
Effectively, all this money gets transferred to the township, is that true?
Yeah.
Or just a conduit of passage?
Right.
And as of May of last year, it goes based on a invoice which delineates where the money has been spent. Okay.
Anything on that? So here's the capital account. So at this point, I'm showing the 23 projected, shows the amounts for the ARPA money and also a grant that the police department received for a shooting simulator, and that should all be done in this year. So, or well, not the whole ARPA fund, but the grant for the police should be, we should get the money and pay it this year, so I put it all in this budget. We also, for next year, we do anticipate, I did put in the budget for a tornado siren. That's something we really need to look into. We don't have one on the far west side of the village. That dollar amount is, I think, at the high end, but we're gonna see what we can do if we can get one. I think in the past we got one for free, but we haven't been able to get one for free this time. So that's in there. $12,000 I put in there for the cybersecurity assessment. It was kind of off the top of my head. I was $70,000 for a police vehicle, which we purchase one in each year, and then I left $200,000 of the village hall improvements yet to be done in the new budget. So
in essence, based on the internal discussions, the ARPA money which made this all possible takes out of future planning. In other words, we had planned a couple of years ago, HVAC replacements, that'll all be done. Literally, for the most part, the major overhaul is taking the sagging, outdated, major maintenances and repairs and HVAC and all of those things. Plumbing has now come out of that as a result of ARPA, fundamentally leaving only, as we agreed, replacing one police vehicle each year. So that's the major deal in the capital. We don't need to reserve near term anymore, at least at this point, for big maintenance. Knock on wood.
And you'll notice I didn't do any transfers from the general fund. That would be something we might want to discuss, but to determine what would be appropriate. So you'll see our fund balance is still, after spending, we would have $1,020,000.
Fund balance over capital would be $1 million after the fiscal year.
Right, without any transfers. Okay, that's covered. That covers all the budget items for the department.
Are there any other questions from the board or finance committee or comments? Okay, we've got a couple of notes on here which will go into some refinements and a couple of questions to be answered.
Mike, I'll make a general comment.
Sure.
I think there is plenty of money in this budget. I think from the finance committee, working with things, there are plenty of places where if needed be, you guys could skinny that down with the board so it shows. And I'm not talking about necessarily employees, but there's, it's not hard to look at the numbers of either projected or the actuals from previous year and find opportunities if you guys as a board decide that you have other precedences, other areas you want to focus on, other areas you want to put money. I think you could find money in this budget relatively easily. So that's for you guys to decide. You decide whether you want to go for this type of a budget or you want to skinny some of this down and use some of that, call it excess, to fund other objectives that you're looking to do. I think it's available. I'm guessing Denise would agree with that. So, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was done on purpose for finance.
Yeah, we present you
To give the board some discretion.
generic budget that you would input from your departments, but I mean, it's not hard to look at that and find opportunities to use those numbers and put those funds somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think from a police department, 4 years ago, there was a lot of equipment. I think we had outdated bulletproof vests, we had no shields, we've purchased a lot of items, upgraded cars for the safety of the officers, additional safety and street items that the police department has had, so we've funneled more and more into that. I think we've gone in 4 years from 6 full-time to 9 officers, so we've increased that help for the police department. So there may be a few more, but I think as far as equipment and so on, other than maintenance of vests, I think we have now, over the last couple of years, done quite a bit to get the police in a good spot. I personally will go, and I'll be up to the board for the changeover to another full-time officer as requested by chief. This board will have to make that approval, and then I think we can take a steady eye on that. And as Elbert is doing, they recognize the instability of part-timers. We'll look at it again, and maybe we'll bump that one more. Okay, but that conversation, let's not plunge in all the way. Let's see how we can do that organically.
One last thing, I just want to let you know about the budget that you're looking at. We were trying to be very thoughtful in the dollars you put into it, and especially, you guys, there was all improvements. That's a one-time spend.
Right.
That ARPA money that you talk about that came from the government had to be used by the village very specifically with restrictions on where it could go. One of the things that came from the finance committee through John's leadership is really to make sure that money was used for a one-time event. In other words, if you put it into a cost that was repetitive every year, hiring people or something like that, you're gonna run out of that money, okay, down the road. So we strongly advise you, and looks like you guys took that recommendation, use it on a one-time thing because it won't be there forever. It goes right.
It's the wisest course.
Well, it is,
It's non-renewable.
I'm sure there are plenty of examples out there who received large sums of money from the government due to COVID and spent it on things that they're gonna run out of that money.
And the requirement is that it has to be spent, the ARPA money has to be spent by 2025. So we bundled it nice and neat. There are reports and audits through the feds on that money. And again, it's not renewable. Here's an opportunity, and the burden of the building needing serious work is now taken care of. All right, do we have any more? Because we've gone about 24 minutes over what we projected. If there are none, go ahead.
I have a request. I know that we're scrolling in Excel right now, which is awesome, but can we get page numbers?
Oh, sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you very much to the Finance Committee. You guys did an amazing job, and to Denise and her staff for putting all this together. This is an incredible labor of love annually. We know what pains and strains you go through to even get it so beautifully on these screens, so thank you.
Yeah, I do want to just point out, to the board and the finance committee, I did pass out a analysis of non-spendable and committed fund balances. And I could send you this in Excel if you wanted to look at what would happen if we transferred certain funds to different funds and what would happen to our fund balance. We didn't have time to do it here, but this might be a good way if you wanted to look at yourself, like what would you recommend transferring, or what, how much money you would want to transfer. So I'll send you this in an Excel so you could, play with it, I guess.
So just in quick recap as we close this out, we've increased our contingency 50,000 over historicals. So we've got that emergency money. Once again, we have a surplus going into this budget. So we do have flexibility through the course of the year. We'll watch that number. We budgeted conservatively on revenue at 95%, which gives us a further buffer as we move forward. Overall, thank you. And I'll reiterate that. I know what you and Lori have gone through, and I want to say thank you very much for the depth you've gone into. So with that, I'll make a request to adjourn.
Mr. President?
Yes?
You and I had talked before the meeting about public comment.
I'm sorry, yes. At this point in time, my apologies. If there's any public comments in this segment, we will open the next meeting with public comment. Any public comments?
About the budget?
Yes, I would just like to commend the Finance Committee for continuing the underestimating of revenue and the overestimating of expense. It's obviously worked well for our community, and I'm very happy to see that you maintain the promise we made to all the people when we incorporated that we could do this without a tax. That's really important. Also, one comment, I assume you're on the Finance Committee. We texted to find out if there was a road levy, and there was not this year, so you shouldn't make the assumption of a 5% increase for the road and bridge tax. Thank you.
And we did not.
So,
Okay, thank you. I'll take a motion. Any other comments? I'll take a motion to adjourn the joint meeting. We have a first and a second. Trustee Muncy. Let's call a roll just for the fun of it.
Trustee White Eagle?
Yes.
Muncy? Aye. George?
Aye.
McKelvey?
Aye.
Aye. Millet?
Millet, are you still there? Now, he might have gotten sidelined in Washington DC, so. We have an adjournment of the joint meeting.
At 7:20.
At 7:20.
Are we gonna take a break?
We're going to take a short 5 or so minute break before we go into the regular board meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you,